Allison, welcome to the Thriving Beyond Diabetes show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored to be here.
It's great to have you with us today. Let's start this episode with your story and mission. You have raised 5 children,
Yes.
built a business in natural health, and now you are encouraging women to reimagine life after 60.
Yes.
The question here is, what attracted you to this path, natural health and helping women embrace the next chapter of life?
Well, I guess what attracted me to this was probably about 35 years ago, or 35 years ago. I was about 30, and I was living in LA. I'm from Oklahoma, and I live back in Oklahoma now. But at that time, I was living in LA. I was a TV producer, and my father was a medical doctor, a surgeon. And so I grew up in a very just kind of medicalized world, like most people in America. I mean, but maybe a little more so. I don't know. It was sort of an antibiotic for everything. Didn't matter really what was going on. But he was a great doctor. I highly respect him. But that was life. And so I got out to LA. I was about 30, and I actually had just consistent yeast infections. And I would just use the typical over-the-counter, recommendations, and just they always came back. And so finally, I had this acquaintance that lived in my apartment building. She was very LA, she had all these potions on her kitchen counter, and I don't know what they were. And finally, I was telling her about this, and she said, "Oh, you have to go to my TCM doctor." I said, "Well, what is that?" And she said, "Traditional Chinese medicine doctor." And she said, "He'll totally help you." So I made an appointment, couldn't get him for 6 weeks. He was a busy guy. Finally, I went there, and it was like a regular doctor's office, but there were tons of supplements behind the front counter. And then when I went in his office, he had me muscle testing, I learned what that was at that point. And he was just testing me on all kinds of substances, all kinds of foods, environmental, pollens, and just everything. And finally, what he said was, "You have got to get off of dairy. And for probably a year, you may be able to add it back in at that point, but, we'll just wait and see. And here's some herbs that I want you to be taking." I don't remember what they were. So I did what he said. And I did realize that I was eating dairy, homogenized, pasteurized dairy, pretty much at every meal. I was eating cereal and milk and pasta and cheese and crackers and, just almost all the time. And so I did what he said. And of course it went away, and I've never had one since. And that was sort of my first experience in the world of natural substances, not synthetic, not made in a lab, helping me. And so, little by little, I just started going, and just asking those questions. Well, then I moved back to Oklahoma and started having children kind of later than most. I was 37 with the first one, had another one at 40 and then 42. Those were both home births. So I was really starting to change my mindset about, I always sort of said, well, what did God intend? Like that was always kind of my question. And so at 43, I was getting sick all the time. I was literally every 6 weeks, I started tracking it. Every 6 weeks, I would just have the flu. My immune system was just down, and I would be in bed for a week, and I had 3 little kids. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. And my key word was, I have got to have energy to be a mother and run after these kids. And so I found a naturopath. Well, so I was little by little, really looking toward natural things. So I found a naturopath doctor. started going to him. He did all these tests, hormone and blood and just everything, poop tests and like everything, heavy metal, like with hair follicle and all the different things. And he came back and he said, well, your adrenals are shot, which was, that was after having 3 kids. So he gave me herbs for that. And then he said, you have too much bad bacteria and not enough good bacteria in your gut, which 85% of our immune system is in our gut. So that's why, I was just getting sick all the time. So he gave me herbs for that. And so little by little, I started the healing process. And I was just looking for all the things that were going to help me in that process. And I got better. And so that was, when I saw those kinds of natural things helping me and healing me and, all of that, I just, I was pretty convinced. And so then in 2018, I got my traditional naturopath certification. I just taught a lot of classes. I thought, we adopted 2 more kids, one from Russia, one from Ethiopia after that. So I had 5 kids, raising them. I was like, what can I do for the adult needs here? So I started teaching classes on natural health and had a partnership with a certain company that, I really believed in their supplements. I still use them. And so, that just kind of was my life. Well, then I turned 60. So I'm 64 now. So that was a few years ago. And I just kind of freaked out. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm 10 years from 70, 20 years from 80. What am I doing with my life? Like, am I doing what I should be doing? But I just felt this sort of transition was about to take place. Several of my kids had moved out of the house. The younger 2 or 3 were very independent. Now that 3rd one's moved out, and so the younger 2 are independent. It's not like it used to be. And I did learn that it's a really transformational time for a lot of women. And so I went on sort of a 7-month little searching odyssey, thinking I know something's changed. I needed something to sink my teeth into. That was also it. I was just like, I need something that's going to get me excited to get up in the morning. What purpose? Like, what is my purpose now? And I think a lot of women go through this, after, say, 30 years of raising kids or 20 or 30, whatever, or a big career for that same length of time, or both. We just get to this point where we're just sort of restless. That was the word. I was very restless. So I thought I'm going to have to say yes to a few things. Not that those are the things I'm looking for, but I feel like they'll just step by step lead me to whatever that thing is. So I found this guy named Jesse Itzler. He's the husband of Sarah Blakely, who invented Spanx, and he's a real entrepreneur. And so he had this whole yearly calendar, and a group on Facebook community where he was just all about, planning your life very intentionally every year. He wanted you to choose a misogi every year. Well, that's a Japanese word for a life-changing event. So every year, choose a misogi. It could be anything. It could be, I'm going to go hike up this mountain. I'm going to lose a certain amount of weight. I'm going to do some challenge. I'm going to, just whatever you want it to be. So I'm in this group for like 3 months, watching all these people, type in there all these really great things they're doing, just living life. And I just was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Finally, it was in March, so I joined it in January. This one lady says, I'm going to start 75 hard tomorrow. That's a big challenge. Have you heard of that, 75 hard?
No.
And does anyone want to do it with me? Well, I had heard of it 4 months prior. And when I listened to a 45-minute podcast on it, and I thought, there's no way I can do that. And it's the guy that started it's big muscular tattoos. I thought, I'm not his target market. And I just thought, there's no way. Well, then this girl says this, and I'm like, I wonder if I could do that. So I listened to it again. I thought, how could I arrange my life to do that? So it's a real physical, kind of mental toughness challenge for 75 days. You have to exercise twice a day. You have to drink a gallon of water, a couple more things. And so I thought, that could be my Masogi. I just turned 60. I was kind of motivated for those reasons. Like, I think that might just sort of be part of what I'm, not the thing, but like lead me to the thing. And I was also doing a mastermind with some other women, kind of asking those key questions. What am I doing with my life? And so finally that July, so this is 7 months after I turned 60, I was doing a meditation and a deep breathing and thing. And it just hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to write a book. That's what I'm going to do. So, and it was going to combine all the things that I loved about natural health. I am fascinated with longevity. How do people get to 100 or 90 or whatever, healthy? And also, I thought I can throw this information out there, but there has to be a plan. It's great. Okay, we can read the information, but how do I execute on it? How do I incorporate this into my life? And when I was a TV producer, planning was essential. It was critical skill to have, probably the number one thing. And then I also homeschooled my kids for like 20 years. Same thing there. Planning was critical. And so I wrote the book, and that was about a 3-year process, and it just came out this year. There's a planner that goes with it. So this book leads to what I call the 60-day dare.
We just to interrupt you here,
Yes.
we will discuss that later. We don't want to. From your story, it sounds very interesting. It shows the struggles. What I can see that you found the solution in the kitchen or by changing your diet.
Well, yes. I mean, all along, from the time I met with that traditional Chinese medicine doctor in California 30 years ago, I mean, I've realized that more and more that food is medicine. It is the fuel for this body that's the car. And so, yeah, that's always been very critical. I mean, I'm a big believer in raw milk. So if you are going to have dairy, that's the kind of dairy it should be. I'm a big believer in the kind of wheat we eat, because the wheat in America is not great at all. And that's a whole interesting story. If you want to get into that, I can tell you why. But, we need to go back to the original wheat that's not been hybridized over and over and over. And then because of that, it does bad things to our body. So, all kinds of, yes, the kitchen is huge. It's a big part.
So the nutrition is the foundation.
Absolutely.
Okay, brilliant. So many of our viewers are navigating life with diabetes, and often the focus is on managing symptoms. And earlier you mentioned how you used to manage symptoms and through medications. So what they are doing, not thriving long term. So my question here is, what does longevity mean to you, and how can someone with diabetes shift from surviving to thriving?
Well, my book, I go through studies that have to do with longevity. Of course, it's the blue zones. That's one of them. For those that don't know, there are like 5 locations in the world called the blue zones, where there's big conglomerations of 100-year-olds, centenarians, and they looked at what do these 5 locations have in common, and it's all lifestyle habits. And then, but there's also big Harvard studies on women for longevity. But I also look at a book called Radical Remission, which is about cancer. Now, I know that's not diabetes, but it is about disease. And how those people, she calls it radical because the people she surveyed, a whole lot of them, these were people that did not have good predicted outcomes, but they did these lifestyle habits and they had great outcomes and they recovered. So, I have relatives with diabetes. I've talked to multiple people with diabetes. I understand it, and it is definitely something that has to be managed, but it can be managed with lifestyle. And so, but lifestyle's hard. I mean, it is hard especially when you don't feel good. And, that's why I have a plan. And so I looked at all those studies and, what do they have in common? And so the reason my book is called 60 is a Good Start, not only for the age, but also because of the 60-day dare that it leads to. So this is a challenge that you're going to design within these parameters that I give you. And so, but 60 days, this is all about habits. Okay, it's can be a thought habit, it can be a physical habit, but our whole lives are about habits. And like we talked about that, I love that line, your future is hidden in your daily routine. What do I want my life to look like 5 years from now? Well, what does my daily routine look like? That is key. And 60 days is key because, as Dr. Caroline Leaf says, and she is a very famous neuroscientist, she's written tons of books, she's probably in her 70s, and she looks under the microscope and can see habits developed on our brain cells, brain synapse, but it takes at least 60 days to develop a new habit. It could take longer. It could take up to 8 months, she says. It depends on the person. It depends on the habit. But we start with 60 days. And so this framework that I have in the book is called the Self-Perpetuating Circle of Purpose. And there's 3 pillars. And this is the beginning of how you're going to design your 60 days. Because that is how we're going to survive and thrive with diabetes, is by looking at, you probably know what you need to do. Do you need to adjust your diet? So the 3 pillars are body work, brain work, and world work. And all these longevity habits fall under those 3 things. Each of those pillars has 5 options that you're going to choose one to do for 60 days in each category. So 3 things, 1 in each category. If you wanted to choose 2 in one category, you could certainly do that. This is your thing, but I want you to set yourself up for success. Sometimes we can overdo it and be like, I'm going to do all these things. And then we get 5 days in and it's too much, right? So we got to baby step our way to health. So within the body work, which is the physical, we're going to choose either eat, and that's going to be whatever. What do you need? Do you need to get rid of something in your diet for 60 days? Do you, sugar or whatever it is, wheat, which turns to sugar. It can be, you can eat a certain way. You could add something to your diet that you need. Number 2 is drink half your body weight in ounces of water. There's some statistic, it's crazy statistic about the majority of the ER visits are solved with hydration. We don't drink enough water. We're 75% water. Our bodies are 75% water, so we need water. We need to move our bodies, so that's another option. I think, I recommend 45 minutes a day of something. For this age group, like 50 and over, for women, I would say the 2 most important things are lifting weights and walking. We have got to have strong muscles. So, and that, you could do twice a week. You could do that. 3 times a week would be better. But just of lifting some weights, and also walking. Walking is huge. The more we walk, the longer our longevity possibilities become. And then sleep. Sleep is critical. The number 1 thing for healing. We need at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep. I have this Aura ring that tracks my sleep, and I love it. It's the first thing I look at in the morning. How did I sleep? Tells me, did I get enough deep sleep, enough REM sleep? And it also tells your stress level during the day. And I'm a type A personality, so I'm kind of always moving fast, and I don't realize, wow, that was a stressful day. I need to slow down. I need to take a 15-minute break and just sit and relax. So sleep, stress, of course, everything in here goes to stress. And stress, my goodness, stress makes everything worse. It may not cause a disease, but it will make it progress faster. So that is definitely something we need to always be looking at. Deep breathing is the last one. Breathing, we don't breathe right in America. We breathe shallow. I used to teach yoga, and I learned a long time ago that, that deep breathing is really critical. Even just like what I like to do every morning is just about a 7 or 8 minute deep breathing session. And so that just kind of gets everything connected and working in your body really well.
Brilliant. Very interesting information. A lot of information to digest here.
It is.
So, yeah. Just to recap, so you have got a framework consists of 3 pillars, and it includes information or approach about nutrition, physical activities, sleep, stress, and deep breathing. What I noticed that even you mentioned lifting weights. Every sports or like a health coach try to focus on lifting weights.
Mm-hmm.
That is very interesting. So this framework is available in your book. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yes, there's the book, and then there's a planner if a person wants to use a planner for the 60 days. So yes, it's all in there.
Brilliant. That will take us to the next point, which is about something you mentioned in our previous meeting. You mentioned something. You said your future is hidden in your daily routine. It stood out to me, and I wanted to ask you about it more. So my question today is, what daily habits do you believe have the biggest impact on our health and purpose, specifically after 60?
Well, that's what I guess it'd be 15 things. So 5 under each category in this book, under body work, which I just mentioned those 5, but brain work and world work. Those, a person's going to look at those and go, well, I do these 3 pretty well, but man, I need help on these. I need to work on these areas, so we know, like for instance, world work, that is all about your purpose and your relationships. This is your outer world. Body work and brain work are your inner world. Brain work is about your mental, emotional, and spiritual self. So world work is about your outer world. We know, they are saying now that relationships, good relationships, not toxic relationships, good relationships are critical for longevity. So one of the things that I have you doing in that is having an intentional conversation, meeting, not a text, but like, I'm going to call my brother who lives across the country and I haven't talked to him in 6 months, or 3 years, just really intentionally developing these relationships. Maybe it's you join a book club in your community that you go to once a month. Maybe, there's also what's really important is the spiritual aspect. So there's a separate one for that that maybe you go to church or a small group or even just a spiritual counselor, on a regular basis. So those relationships are huge. There's a volunteer option, and a lot of people find their new purpose through volunteering. Certainly volunteer for something you want to do, something that sounds fun. Don't do something that you're going to eventually just not want to go to, and you're just doing it because you think you should. I really believe that God is putting you where your heart desires to be. He puts the desires of our heart in us, I believe. And so what is speaking to you? But then purpose is huge too. We need a purpose that energizes us, that makes us excited to get up in the morning. So we have to search for that sometimes. That's kind of what I was doing for those 7 months. I was really searching for what do I want to do, in the world. So I mean, I think that all of these things are important. For instance, I have I still got people living in my house. My husband's here. I mean, I have like that area of my life's going well. What do I need to work on? I need to walk more right now. It's like we go in and out of these, like I was good for a while, but I need to do better right now. Or, but it's all about being intentional. So intentional in what is my day going to look like? What is my week going to look like? What are my 60 days going to look like? That's when it's talking about, your future's hidden in your daily routine. Well, that's the opposite of just getting up and just going without thinking about it. Like, when am I going to do that 10 minutes of deep breathing? When am I going to do that? I've got to create a habit. Maybe it's right when I roll out of bed, or maybe it's while I'm still in bed in the morning. So does that make sense? So all of these are the habits that I'm hoping people will get to, where these are just normal in their everyday lives. That would be the goal.
Brilliant.
That
Very
answers your
interesting.
question.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Very interesting. Earlier, you mentioned the 60 day or days study, and you said the starting point of creating a new habit will take about 60 days to see the results, then you can build on it. So it might take longer for some people. So, and you have also a 60-day challenge in your book.
Yes.
Is that correct? It's something separate.
Well, no, the book leads to the 60-day dare. So the book is divided into sections on the body work, the brain work, the world work. So you're going to read a lot of things about why is this important. We need to know why for us to be motivated to do something. So you're going to learn, there's stories. I've got personal stories in there. I've got stories of other people in there. There's just, you got to understand the why of it all. And then it's little by little, it's building you up to create. And then there's at the end, there's a page where you're going to write down, okay, what's my 60-day dare going to look like? What am I choosing out of Bodyworks? Very specifically, you got to use those SMART goals. So they're specific, they're measurable, they're, what's the A stand for? I can't even remember, but SMART goals are very specific. That is the key. So you wouldn't say, okay, I'm going to exercise 45 minutes. You would say, I'm going to exercise 45 minutes, 7 days a week at, 9 a.m. If I can't do it at 9 a.m., I'm going to do it at 6 p.m. You're going to be specific, so very clearly if you accomplished it or not. So it's just all about being super intentional.
Brilliant. Very interesting. I was going to ask you, give me a specific example to create a new habit, and you just mentioned that. So basically, even a habit, you can break it down. It's like, instead of walking 30 minutes or 1 hour, maybe we will start with 10 minutes a day.
Absolutely.
Then gradually you increase that. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up, because one point I make now, and I'll make it now, and I'm doing the book too. It doesn't matter where you're starting. If you have just never gone on walks, or and you feel like all I can do is walk one block and one block back, that is fine. That is where you start, and that's what you write down. I'm going to walk to the stop sign and back every day. Now, if it turns out you can walk a little more, great. But you will at least succeed in walking to the stop sign and back. And another thing I like to say is just lace up your shoes. Just do that part. And by the way, okay, this is another key line. Environment triggers behavior. So this is part of creating our daily routine. Environment triggers our behavior. If your tennis shoes are in the closet hidden, you're not going to see them. You're not going to want to put them on. But if your tennis shoes are like out in your room where you see them right when you get out of bed or go down the stairs or whatever it is, just lace up your shoes. Just put them on. Once you put them on, it's a whole lot easier to walk out the front door and down the street. You know what I'm saying? So wherever you're starting, I give some recommendations, and those could be goals eventually, but you start where you can start and where you can be successful for those 60 days. And if you mess up, that's okay. Just start again the next day.
Brilliant. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing that as well. So now, before we talk about accountability, which is essential for achieving health goals.
Yes.
So let's recap. Now, you talked about living with purpose. It's not just about health alone. So there should be a purpose in life. And you mentioned your framework and how it helps people achieve their health. You mentioned longevity, touch a little bit on that, and the 60-day challenge to create new healthy habits. Now we have all that information, or the foundation to start something. Now we are starting. The question is about accountability. So, I might read your book, practice something or a few things from it, 1 week, 2 weeks, maybe a month, then leave it completely. The question is here, what does accountability look like in your work, and how can someone build that into their health journey? And I'm calling it a health journey.
Yes, absolutely. It is a health journey, and it's a puzzle for everybody. We're all different. We all have different weaknesses, and we have to figure out what they are, where they are, and how to deal with them. But yes, accountability is everything. I have definitely learned that after many years of starting something and quitting. So I think, there are a few people out there that do things, they can do it on their own. They decide to do something and they do it, and that's great. But I would say for the majority of us, we need accountability. That could be a friend. I have 2 friends down the block who are about to start the 60-day dare in about a month. They're going to do it together. They live about a block from each other, so that should be pretty convenient. And I was just like, I'm so glad. I want to hear all about it, and it's so good that you're doing it together. So my recommendation is you at least do it with a friend, or you get a group together and do it as a group. And if you don't want to do that, I am developing a program also, an online program where we have a tracking system that you can use. Like each day you'll go into this app and check off your body work, brain work, and world work. And then we'll have weekly Zoom calls for the purpose of accountability. So it's just, we'll meet, it won't be long. It'll just be, hey, here's what went well for me. This is what didn't go well. Does anybody have any tips? It's just people meeting people, and we need to do that. It's so easy, especially in our world today, where we are online a lot and in our houses a lot. And there's a lot of loneliness, and especially as we get older. And so that's why one of those options in world work is called engage. That's connecting with people. But this is another way to connect, and it's a way for accountability. I mean, here's a for instance, I just joined a book club for the first time. I've never been in a book club. I joined it last month, and we read fiction books. Actually, it's a historical fiction. I never read fiction. I'm always reading nonfiction books. So I thought, oh, this will be good for me. I should do it. And it's kind of a struggle. And I listen to it on audio. But I am listening to it every day a little bit because I know I have to show up at this book club having read the book, right? To be able to have a conversation. So there's just that motivation to do the thing because I'm going to be showing up with my friends or in a group, and I want to be able to have done what I said I was going to do, right? It's just, and it's a way for us to, it's a bummer to say we're going to do something and then we didn't do it and we quit. So it's also just learning how to, be accountable to yourself and be a person that does what they say they're going to do. And that's hard. That's been very hard for me over the years. So that's why I'm like all about having a plan, having accountability, and giving people an option to have that too. That's what the planner is all about, the online program. But you can do it with friends too. So
brilliant, very interesting. So what you're saying, accountability is everything. So there are different ways to be held accountable for the action that you promised to do. It's for your own sake. Yes. So either by getting the support and the accountability from friends, groups, either local or online, and health coaches like yourself. So it's not enough just to know about something or to decide that you are going to do, then you end up doing nothing.
That's true. A lot of times that's what happens.
Exactly. I noticed that accountability give you even if you don't want to do it, you have to do it, but you will not do it only or unless there is someone pushes you.
Yes.
Or you won't do it.
Yes.
Okay. This will lead us to the next or the final point, which is about your final message. So before we wrap up this episode, do you have a final message you would like to share with our audience?
I mean, I think just this is sort of about the accountability piece a little bit, but this is another line that I love, and it is, we are the 5 people we hang out with. So, and that could be, who you're listening to. I mean, part of the brain work is, really uplifting ourselves by listening to good things or reading good things. But we are the 5 people. So if we're hanging around people that are, I'll say toxic or bringing us down, that's not going to be good. We need to be surrounding ourselves with uplifting things. For years, I'm always listening to podcasts, just as I'm going through my day. If I'm in my car driving, I'm listening to something uplifting. Maybe it's about natural health. Maybe it's about something spiritual, but something that's positive. And because, it's tough. Life is tough. So, we have to continually be doing that by the people that we're around or what we're putting in our eyes and in our ears.
Brilliant. Very interesting. Thank you for sharing your great final message. Where can people reach you or learn more about your work and what you do?
They can go to my website, AllisonMcCuneDavis.com. There's a place where you can sign up to find out about the 60-Day Dare, or you can just read stuff there. There's links to buy the book, but it's on Amazon too. And I'm probably on social media. I'm the most on Instagram, but also Facebook, just under my name. You can search my name, Allison McCune Davis, and find me in either place. Send me a message if you want.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing your contact information. People can find your website link in the show notes of this episode, so they can access there. And you mentioned that your book is available on Amazon, so they can order it from there.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you, Allison Davis, for sharing helpful tips and insight. Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening to this episode. If you need additional guidance, you can book a call at wellnessimpact.org. If you found value in today's discussion, join our thriving community and subscribe or follow us for more insights and strategies. Until next time, take care of your health and keep thriving.